Okay, hi everyone, and welcome. We're delighted to have you here. This is our first workshop, to my knowledge, on the foundations of inclusive teaching. Inclusive teaching is, of course, a big topic. It pertains not only to your course design, but how you teach your course, assess your students, and in your individual interactions with your students. So there's lots to discuss. Um, oh, awesome. It looks like Ramona's here. So there's lots to discuss, but we wanted to begin with the syllabus, hence the subtitle of our presentation, How to Create an Inclusive Syllabus, since it really is the foundational document in your course and informs all that you do to support your teaching and your students' learning.
You can come into the Zoom. Oh, sorry. Let me
Oh, it's
mute.
okay. Okay. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Um, Please feel free to unmute your mic and ask questions. Jump in if you need clarification on anything we're talking about. We will have some opportunities for you guys to interact. Um, and but please do put questions, comments in the chat, and when one of us is presenting, the other will be um, uh, answering chat questions or bringing it to the presenter's attention. We are recording, so this recording will be shared, and you'll be sent the recording along with the slide deck and any other resources we have for the presentation at a later point. So before we get started, just wanted to introduce ourselves. I know some of you. Um, all of you, in fact, right? My name is Laura Smith, and I'm a senior instructional designer with Rush. Been here since 2020. Lynette, and you are muted, Lynette. Just FYI.
Okay. And I'm Lynette Washington. I'm also a senior instructional designer, and I have been here since 1991. It's way too long.
Wow, that is amazing. All right, so let's go ahead and move. I'm sort of jostling three screens here, so trying to get myself oriented. Lynette,
Okay.
take it away.
Yeah, these are the workshop objectives we will go over in class. So we're going to describe what an inclusive syllabus and why it matters for engagement and learning. And we're going to list and describe the key components of an inclusive syllabus. And third, we're going to collaborate on a shared resource to aid in the development of your inclusive teaching statement. And I think Laura has something she wants to say.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add that this workshop is definitely designed to give you a foundational understanding of what an inclusive syllabus is, and specifically the inclusive teaching statement, so that you can develop your own and have the skills to begin that conversation and take the steps in your own program and discipline. So obviously, the changes you're capable of making to your syllabus are very much, of course, dependent on your program requirements, the approved syllabus you use. But we want to, with this workshop, kind of empower you to, to spearhead those changes should you want to, and to make the changes you'd like to make now to support inclusive teaching in your classroom.
Any questions? Okay, so what we're going to do, we want to talk about what does it mean to belong and how long can faculty help facilitate belonging? We're going to start with this great quote that Laura found, and she put it in the slide. So to build the professor's most genuine value, everyone's presence. And this is by Bell Hook. And Laura's going to pull up the poll everywhere because we're going to do a poll everywhere.
Yeah, just one sec.
And we got a lot of things going on here.
We do. Okay. Now you guys can see the poll everywhere we have here. Everyone, is that showing on your end, Lynette?
Yes, that's showing on my
Okay,
end. And it
great.
says, how can faculty foster a sense of belonging among students.
Yeah, so feel free to respond. There's the QR code. You can also respond by web using that link above or by text using those directions. And because belonging, is such a key part of the inclusive classroom, we wanted to begin with just this sort of open-ended question to talk about how we can support that feeling of belonging in our classroom, because we're going to be focusing a lot on that today and in the recommendations that we offer. And if you prefer to just respond verbally or in the chat, you can do that too. You don't have to respond to the poll. Or how do you foster a sense of belonging in your classroom or aim to? Great. Yeah, the language you use in course materials and presentations, for sure. And we're going to be talking about language actually at the beginning. Jennifer says, reviewing materials for bias. Yes, excellent. Anyone else?
I'm just gonna respond audibly
Uh-huh.
because I'm
Okay.
having a hard time. I'm just getting back, so I don't have my dexterity. But
I get it. No problem.
I'm going to say just being very mindful of my language, especially since I teach the women's health course.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about women's health, it it's gender based already. I'm not gonna say gender biased, but it's gender based already, and so it's been very challenging for me in teaching to make sure I'm being very inclusive in my language. What I'm talking about basically was all my life I've been talking about women's health. So that's my challenge. So I'm very mindful. I try to be mindful. I'm not
Yeah.
always.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Ramona. And I realized earlier in the presentation, I addressed everyone as guys, right? So that wasn't very gender inclusive of me. I have this habit of doing that, and I'm trying to retrain myself to say folks, instead of something more gender neutral, like you mentioned. It's hard when you have, especially a discipline where you have those sort of traditional um, uh, language around the topic and having to shift that in order to be more inclusive. And then Kate also said, oh, the text doesn't seem to be working. Starting the course term with some sort of icebreaker or sharing activity. Yeah, to sort of maybe foster this sense of community, shared learning. That's a great example. And then someone else said, reach out to advisees at the beginning of the term to let them know you care about their academic success and offer introductions on discussion to get to know each other. Let all students know all perspectives are important. These are all great, and we're going to be talking about a lot of these today. So thank you so much. Please feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to go back to the presentation.
And as you go back, I just want to say belonging means that students from all background, identities, and experience can see themselves reflected in the content. It feels respected in the learning environment and are supported and engaging meaningful with the material. So all the students feel included in the class, and that's just the way we want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for adding that, Lynette. Okay, Lynette, is this you or me? It's me, right?
Yep, yep.
Okay. So now that we started reflecting on what inclusivity and belonging mean, and we can take various forms, we want to apply it to teaching. So I'll begin with a definition of the term by Professor Christine Hawkins from her article, Inclusive Teaching and Inclusive Learning and Teaching in Higher Education. And she wrote, quote, inclusive learning and teaching in higher education refers to the ways in which pedagogy, curricula, and assessment are designed and delivered to engage students in learning that is meaningful, relevant, and accessible to all. It embraces a view of the individual and individual difference as the source of diversity that can enrich the lives and learning of others. And this is a definition I frequently came across and it's frequently cited. I think it really just nicely encapsulates the spirit of inclusive teaching. So overall, our hope is that we can offer clarity and understanding to a term that's often scapegoated, especially today, and especially and help you establish concrete steps toward implementation in your class. And of course, that is endlessly variable depending on your own preferences, your own teaching style, and we'll talk about all of that. And as you know, inclusivity is a part of Rush's mission. So adopting an inclusive teaching practice fits within the mission and its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just wanted to give a nod to that. And this is taken from the Rush website. Okay, now I think it's you, Lynette.
Yeah, what is inclusive syllabus? An inclusive syllabus is a course document intentionally designed to support student support from diverse backgrounds, experience, and identities. It helps reduce barriers to learning and signals their commitment to equality and respect in the classroom. Again, there is no prescribed format for inclusive syllabus. They can vary widely and they can depend on the course, the discipline, and the faculty. Today, we're going to focus on some common elements shared by inclusive syllabi across each discipline. So, are we going to show this PowerPoint, or I mean, show this document we have for them, or are we going to show it later?
Oh, I think we're going to show it later. So I'm just going to advance to talking a little bit more about why inclusive syllabi matter, unless there's something you wanted to add in,
No,
Lynette. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's in this sort of flexibility. And hi, Branka. Hi, Julianne. Thanks for joining us. So why do inclusive syllabi matter? So you're as you all know, because you're experienced great faculty, your syllabus is often the first opportunity your students have to get to know you in your course. So it is, for better or worse, their first impression and sets the tone for your course. It also becomes your roadmap when reviewing and redesigning your course for inclusivity. So this is why we're beginning with your syllabus when focusing on the foundations of teaching, inclusive teaching. So if you've put considerable design toward designing your course for inclusivity using teaching best practices, but don't address the structure and tone of your syllabus may be inadvertently working against you and your objectives or your aims. So consider this. I've got a couple of examples here, 2 sample statements about cell phone use in the classroom. The first sample statement reads, cell phone use is not allowed in my classroom. If I see any student using their cell phone, I will confiscate it immediately and will not be returned until the end of the class. The second statement, sometimes you may be asked to use your cell phone to conduct a class activity. However, since using cell phones may be distracting for both you and your classmates, and because we are not as adept at multitasking as we believe ourselves to be, I ask you to silence and put away your cell phones during class time. You and your peers will learn more if you concentrate on this class while we are here together. With a disclaimer, right, that this can be dependent upon personal or family issues, or that requires more constant use of a cell phone. So when looking at these 2 statements, it's probably kind of obvious, right? But how, if you were a student, right, how would these statements make you feel? And what wordings in each of those statements triggered those feelings? Feel free to respond verbally or in the chat, however you like.
Well, I can tell you number 2 is correct. And, number 1, not allowed in all caps mean you're hollering at me, and, not allowed, come on. And you are confiscated immediately. But I'm going to let someone else and not hog the mic.
I wouldn't imagine that statement 1. I cannot imagine that being used in a higher education course, higher education, because that sounds like you're talking to high school kids or grammar school kids.
Yes.
And so I can't even imagine that would be the case. But so statement number 2 definitely sounds more, for anybody, it sounds better. And so I would think that needs to use in all levels of education, grammar school on up. But I can't imagine number one being in a course that we teach because we dealing with adults. So I'm not gonna confiscate anybody's phone. So
Okay, yeah, I probably so. And Kate said the first one comes across as more punitive for sure. And that Jennifer said makes her feel like a child and not respected as an adult learner. Yes. So maybe these may be more applicable to K through 12 or found more often in K through 12. Looks like Julianne raised her hand, has a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, the interesting thing is we have had some students do this to faculty, highlight, like bold, make letters
Okay.
large. And so we actually have taken this on as kind of a professional learning. And then we will say back to the student, this is not a professional email.
Mhm.
Please write this more professionally before we actually respond to your email, and then teaching them also how to write professionally back and forth to
Mhm.
That's
faculty
great.
or physicians, or because they are working in an interprofessional team. I've seen many students do this lately, so I don't know if they've been treated this way by teachers in the past and they feel it's okay to do, but we do redirect that type of behavior.
Mm. That's
That's
a
great.
really great point, especially since later we're going to be talking a bit about sort of the hidden curriculum of higher education and how some of these communication expectations and etiquette may not be, known to all students, right, who don't have the experience or who may have been addressed in a similar fashion, right, and expect that that's how they would respond. Although I cannot imagine writing in all caps to my professor, but that's me, not the other person. Um, so I think you all get the idea, right? That in fact, inclusive syllabi are evidence-based practices, and just wanted to cite a couple of peer-reviewed studies, both one in 2010 on the left, and then 2016 on the left, and 2010 on the right. These studies found that the use of an inclusive syllabus, sometimes referred to as a learner-centered syllabus, led to students rating faculty as more caring, creative, and enthusiastic than faculty utilizing what are commonly referred to as a teacher-centered syllabus. That includes what the Cornell Center for Teaching Innovation describes as, quote, mechanical or dictatorial language. And the study on the left by Richmond et al. Used a sample size of about 90 students randomly assigned a learner or teacher-centered syllabus, and then were asked to rate their perception of that faculty based on the syllabus. And not surprisingly, right, the learner-centered syllabus received much more positive reception. So again, I think this may be sort of intuitively understood, but this can suggest that it's not only what you include in the syllabus, but how you include it, the language that you use. Then we're going to talk about key components of an inclusive syllabus. So Lynette's going to start us off there.
Yeah, here are some of the components that we consider an inclusive syllabus. Welcoming and accessing language, clear expectation and support resources, diverse content and perspective, and inclusive teaching statement. Now, we have provided these, but we're going to go in more detail of each of these in our next couple of slides.
Yeah, and feel free. It looks like Kate, you also mentioned something in the chat. Did you want to comment on that verbally, or I'm just looking at your post here or your chat message here?
I mean, I can say it. I feel bad
Mhm.
kind of going back to the earlier thing.
Oh,
but
that's okay. No worries.
Interestingly, the almost verbatim though, that first sentence of the first sample is in one of my current practicum syllabi.
Oh.
And part of that is around the cell phone use in the patient care areas. And so I think often where I struggle is when it's in paragraphs and sentence and softer, I don't know that it's always perceived as important. So how do you get that this is the behavior that's expected? Like almost where are those zero tolerance lines without it coming across why we don't like statement one of that it's very kind of, teacher centric or very, kind of punitive.
That's a great question. And I'm not to say that one is necessarily correct and one is incorrect, right? And I think it's endless. It's sort of very much dependent not only on the course you teach, but your discipline, right? You mentioned not wanting these cell phones specifically in a clinical setting. So there are very specific reasons why you would need to be very emphatic about that and make sure that students know that that is a firm policy. I think there are ways, and Lynette and others feel free to jump in to emphasize that, whether or not you're reiterating that verbally during the first week of class, perhaps doing a syllabus sort of survey or syllabus quiz where you ask them to refer to specific parts of the syllabus that you want them to pay close attention to, and that's a required kind of component worth 1 point during the first week of class, just so that again, you're providing them with various different opportunities to get exposure to and pointing out parts of the syllabus that you feel are worth looking at closely. Because as we know, students sort of skim it, and that's the danger of putting too much, right, in the syllabus, is that it won't get read, right? So those are a couple of ideas I have off the top of my head. Lynette or anyone else want to offer some other suggestions?
So I want to comment on what Kate just said, because this becomes a difficulty when students are in a clinical settings, because everybody else is using their cell phone. Now, some people may be using it for, professional reasons, looking up things, to help their patients, but most people are using them for personal reasons. And so I think it's going to be difficult to convey that to students. And so you almost feel like you need that all caps, look, you can't use your cell phone kind of attitude when the people that they're emulating to be, the nurses that they want to be, are also using their cell phones. And so this is how it's hard to get that. It's absolutely not allowed if it's not for a professional reason, your smartphone. And so it's you feel like you got to do it. You feel like you got to treat them like your kids. You do feel like you have to. I'm sorry. I agree with you on that, Kate. But
yeah, and Bronca made a good point in the chat, and I think you're exactly right, Ramona. And I think it's providing that rationale to students and being transparent, tying it back to why this matters. Why they're in the program they're in, why this does not serve the patient. Why it's important for their learning that they abide by these restrictions, right? So that you have a good reason for their not being able to, not allowing it, and they need to understand what those reasons are, right? So I think, as Bronca said, you can give an absolute statement, and Bronca, sorry, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but then provide reasons, right, in a less punitive way after that. I know it's sort of it's a delicate balance, right? And because you want to be able to communicate the things that matter so that students see it, right? Especially when students notoriously don't tend to look at the syllabus very closely. All right, Lynette, do you want to start with the first?
Accessibility is a key part of inclusivity, but we don't go into detail about that. We know that it's part of your evaluation of inclusivity in the syllabus, but we're gonna, table that for right now. And we're gonna go with number one. It says, and clearly inform students how to request accommodation. This includes contact for the campus discipline office, and it includes, an example, like say for instance, if you have a disability and need accommodations to succeed in this course, please contact blah 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 blah. And we all have this in our syllabus because we have it written in for you. So we all have this in your syllabus, and it's I am committed to creating an accessible learning environment and will work with you to ensure all your needs are met. Yeah, and so number two, you're using and welcoming respectfully and student-centered language. We will and you will versus students will. I've seen that so many times, saying students will, and it avoids the stagnant language about disability on academic support. An example would be everyone learns differently. and I value diverse learning styles. Please feel free to discuss any learning needs with me, whether or not they are formally documented. So that's one of the ways we have it. And number three, shows willingness to adjust deadlines or teaching methods are needed. Encourage other communications about barriers to learning. And what and one of my examples is life's happen. If you enter challenges that impact your learning, let's talk about it. How we can keep you on track. We don't want you to, get bad grades. We want you to know before you get them and come to us and talk to me as an instructor. So number 4 says indicates that materials are or will be provided in accessible formats. For example, you have a screen reader, a friendly caption for video. We always have those or need those. And for examples, the course materials will be provided in accessible format. If you need alternative format, please contact me or the accessibility office, but you'll contact me first, and I will provide it with you and make sure I'll get that for you.
And I know oftentimes, thank you, Lynette, that, you're notified by the Office of Accessibility about those needs at the, prior to the course start date. So a lot of these systems are already in place, right?
Yep.
And built into your syllabus as boilerplate language, but not all of them. So, so thanks, Lynette. Hope I didn't cut you off. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, you didn't.
Okay, great. So secondly, an inclusive syllabus includes clear expectations and support resources for students. So this ensures that students, of course, are given the tools they need to succeed. And as I mentioned, while many of these boilerplate resources and policies may be found as fixed items in our syllabus template, not all of them are. For example, there could be unspoken expectations, or what I referred to earlier as the quote, hidden curriculum of higher education, that not all students come to school knowing, whether they may not have a lot of college preparatory experience. Maybe in our case, they would, because these are advanced degrees, often that they're getting at Rush, or perhaps they're first generation college students. So some of the etiquette may not be as known to them. So overall, students don't all come to the class with the same set of skills. And as faculty, we may make assumptions about where they're at based on our own experience or based on where we assume they should be at. So being equitable and inclusive means that we don't make these assumptions, but rather be mindful that we provide clear expectations for students, knowing that what benefits one will likely benefit everyone. So for example, the first one, and I won't read through these word for word, but setting clear expectations for students. As Lynette mentioned, using accessible language to outline what success looks like in your course. Many of us already have guidelines for student success in our syllabus. You could expand that in a variety of ways by explaining not just what to do, but how to do it. Many of us and many of you, I'm sure, provide exemplars, but other ways you could add other examples of this include, providing students with some guidelines for how to ask a question or engage appropriately in class discussion, how to study effectively, how to take advantage of office hours and that the use of office hours in general, or as was mentioned earlier, the appropriate or preferred way to send an email to your faculty and the appropriate length of time to wait for a reply, right? We've all gotten that email and then a follow-up within an hour, like with the expectation that we should have to answer it during that time frame. So this could be a good opportunity for us to communicate those, that communication etiquette in advance. Providing information on support needed to reach those expectations, clearly outline any policies for participation, late work, and extension. And Lynette already talked about the opportunity for flexibility with participation, if possible, if it's relevant, or if it's possible within your own class. And I think most importantly, which is why I started, providing a rationale, right? Why is it important Why is it important for their professional career that they meet these expectations? I think it's always helpful to when you tie it back to their learning goals and for their professional aspirations. I think it helps to make that policy more meaningful, and hopefully you get more adherence to that. I have a few examples, but since it's 1:32, I'm not going to go into each of them, but here are just a few examples of technology access, digital communication etiquette, which I already talked about, and we'll share this slide deck with you afterwards so that you can refer back to some of these in greater detail on your own time. And the rationale for course expectations. And here's one of those examples that I mentioned earlier. Quote, "It's important to me that you understand why you're being asked to learn certain material and perform specific tasks in this class. Transparency is a key aspect of that, and I will make every effort to explain my rationale for assigning required materials, assignments, and activities, and demonstrating how they're aligned to your learning goals." And for me, transparency is a really key term there. I know it's difficult to do, right? So I think, revisiting our syllabus and those expectations on a regular basis to see if we're doing that, and if it's warranted, is a good practice. Oh, and it's me again, sorry. Diverse content and perspectives. I know that many of us, all of us probably already do this, right? Because, that's one of the reasons we work at Rush. So diverse content and perspectives are a key part of an inclusive syllabus and this sort of foundational element in your course design. And this not only pertains to your course modality, right? Different means of accessing course materials and different means that students have to demonstrate their knowledge of your content, whether it be, not just having them complete readings, but also watch videos, listen to podcasts, look at slide decks, engage with content in different ways, and for them to be able to demonstrate their knowledge of material in different ways is sort of part of that. But mostly what this point refers to is that content is diverse in perspective, and this may include voices from diverse communities with respect to race, age. I combined those two: race, age, gender, ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation, class, disability, etc. And I always, think about the sort of, as you're reviewing those materials for diversity, to consider whose voice is missing. And this connects to the third point, that content ideally should resonate with the individual lived experiences of students. Now, that's not always possible depending upon what you're teaching, right? But sort of trying to be culturally responsive whenever possible, and teach what relates to students' everyday realities or the real lived experiences of those in their communities. That could be a local issue or a local experience. And I think many of us do this already because we work at Rush, and Rush is very conscientious about serving the community in which we live and work. So three sort of just key points I think always good to remember when evaluating for diverse content and perspectives. And it even meets Rush best practices. So just a quick nod to learning materials, best practice 3.2, and the emphasis on cultural relevance and inclusion.
And this one is an inclusive teaching statement. Don't forget that it's short. The statement is short, reflective piece that explains how you create an equitable, respectful, and supportive learning environment for all our students, regardless of their background, their abilities and identities and perspective. So we're going to start off with number 1 here. It says, acknowledge the value of student diversity. You acknowledge their race, the same as Laura said, the gender, ability, and then you express your dedication to creating an inclusive classroom culture. And so one of the examples I always say, I believe that learning is most effective when students feel respected. seen and supported. I strive to create a classroom that welcomes diverse perspective in their lives. And number two, it starts with teaching practices and support exclusive. Exclusive teaching practices aim to ensure that all students, regardless of ability, background, or learning style, can participate, engage, and succeed. And some of the examples we have of the teaching that goes with the exclusive is universal design and design lessons from the start to be accessible to the students. And one of the examples is providing lecture notes in multiple formats. You can provide them audio, visual, text, so students with visual impairments or reading difficulties can still access content. Um, and then you have collaborative learning. Students work together in diverse groups to achieve learning goals. They work together in groups. They work together, to get their work done. And be collaborative. And the last one is the differentiate instruction. Tailor instructions to meet individual needs by varying content, process, or product. And a good example of that means in a history class or, nursing class, students can choose how to write an essay. They can create a poster or record a video presentation, all at the same topic. So this will be one assignment, and they have choices of different steps that relate to them based on their strength and their performances. So you give them choices, and most students like that. Accessibilities, we have that. Um, the course materials use readable fonts. We never get enough of saying that. High contrast colors, avoid excessive text formatting. For example, no italics, just avoid it as much as you can. We know we have to have them there, but as much as you can, avoid it. You ensure digital documents, PDFs, PowerPoints are screen friendly environment. They're screen readers, they're friendly, they're tagged, they're headers, they got all text, they got it all, and capture all videos and provide transcripts for audio context. So we use all of that. And number four, commitment to continuous learning. Listening to students is our main goal. We want them to listen to us as well as we listen to them. So example is I view students as partners in the learning process, mid-semester feedback surveys, informal check-ins, one-on-one meetings give me insight into how I can better support their learning and well-being. Okay, that's it, Laura. Laura, you muted.
Thank you for letting me know. Sorry, if you don't mind, I wanted to just jump in and say before we continue is that we know this is a lot to take in, but as we mentioned before that, redesigning your syllabus and course for inclusivity is an endlessly sort of flexible sort of approach that faculty can take. So not all of these things that might necessarily be applicable to you, but we thought we would start at a very foundational level by talking about the inclusive teaching statement. So that's where we're going to devote our attention for the last 20 minutes of this workshop is, step one, you can begin with your inclusive teaching statement, which can then begin to inform a lot of the revisions you might make to your syllabus and course when you're redesigning for inclusivity. So Lynette, I know was going to read to you and talk about one such example.
Yeah, this is a sample, of our discipline from a generic, teaching statement. So I am committed to creating an exclusive learning environment where diverse perspective and experience are respected and valued. This course welcomes students of all backgrounds, again, identities, abilities, and learning styles. I invite you to engage with course materials, critically, share your insights respectfully, and help build a community where everyone can thrive. If you encounter barriers to your learning in this course, please feel free to discuss with me and we can find a solution together. Now, we say all this, we're reading these to give you a sense of what they are in preparation for our activity on creating an inclusive syllabi.
Yeah, and then
Or
creating
a
a
teacher statement.
yeah, in creating an inclusive teaching statement for sure. So Lynette read off a great sort of generic sample statement that could be adapted to different disciplines or courses. Here's another example that's more specific to the health sciences. So you may notice here wording that pertains to clinical practice. So for example, this course is committed to create an accessible and inclusive learning environment where all students can thrive regardless of background, identity, ability, status, or learning preference. As healthcare professionals, you will serve diverse patient populations, and our classroom should reflect the inclusive excellence we aspire to in clinical practice. And then it goes on to include the commitments that the faculty will make to the students, and what the faculty invites the students to do. So that could be your commitments to including diverse learning materials, maintaining a respectful environment, responding to accessibility requests, and inviting students to say sharing their preferred pronouns, approaching them when needed, etc. And then it sort of wraps it up with an emphasis on that rationale, right? Why this is important to healthcare excellence and to their course in general. So these are just a couple of different sort of sample statements that you could reflect on as we engage in our activity during the last part of class. And as you reflect on how you might develop your own inclusive syllabus statement, which would be that first step toward revising and reviewing and revising your course for inclusivity.
Lauren's gonna pull up a poll, a Google Doc, where you can write in, what you think about these statements. What are my teaching goals? What will I be willing to provide and promise? What are the unique needs of my discipline and course with regard to inclusivity? And this is different no matter where you teach. So you won't have one shape fit all. It'll be all different. So if you can just take about 2 or 3 minutes to, type in this Google Doc what you think. And while you're typing it in, I'll go ahead and talk about different things that's on the page. So what are my teaching values? Are my teaching values the same? Are they different? Are they exclusive? What do you think?
So these are just to expand on what Lynette's saying a bit. Hopefully you saw the Google Doc link in the chat. You can open it there and it is editable. So we've made this editable so that you can respond to each of these 3 questions and use it kind of as a framework for you as you are customizing and developing your own inclusive syllabus, inclusive teaching statement. On page 2, there are those same, in addition to 1 or 2 more generic statements that you can refer to if you're looking for concrete examples of how you might articulate your values, how you might, what are the things you're willing to promise to students or commit to. And also what what are the unique needs of my discipline? That might go back to something Ramona shared earlier about cell phone use in the classroom and how that's really important that that policy is abided by because it's of these clinical settings that students are learning in.
Yeah.
So take a few minutes. We'll just do some quiet sort of reflection and also population of this Google Doc, and then we'll talk about it together in about, I don't know, 150-ish or so. Does that work for you, Lynette?
Yeah, that works fine.
Okay, great. And if you have any questions or any issues as you are jumping into the doc, please let us know. I appreciate those of you who are already in there.
That looks great. One more minute. Okay, it's 1:50. We're gonna go ahead and talk about these. Um, what am I teaching about? Values, flexible, balanced with accountability. That's good. Laura, do you want to comment on these?
No, I'd love to hear from attendees, like those who have um, entered some of the feedback anonymously, or if there are any of these you wanted to expand on or discuss more. I noticed that I believe it's Ramona talking about her struggle with the course, her course being focused on women, but also wanting to use gender inclusive language in that context. Anyone want to comment verbally or elaborate in chat or about any of these that you've included here? And please continue to populate the worksheet. We don't mean to rush you.
And we'll give you these worksheets at the end of the session so that you can reflect on them, and you might see somebody else idea that's good for your course. And you have it.
So, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse or a live patient, but this continues to be my struggle because my course is about women, so it is hard to use the right language. Like, see, there are some terms I don't like. I don't like the term pregnant people. I just don't like it. That's my kind of bias. I don't like it. I'm sorry. And so I have to really struggle and make sure I'm using the right language, really based on my own bias. And so, now that I've been out for almost a year, I'm gonna really try to work on that. When I come back, which I come back next Wednesday, by the way.
Oh, welcome back.
Yeah.
So That's that is, and that's the truth. I can't say it any other way. That's just how I am.
Ramona, I'm with you on that. The word birthing person does not come naturally to me.
No.
Well, how do you find your students, both, any of you, or students' use of the language and their feedback with regard to language use in your course so far?
I have it's usually not an issue unless in the class we have somebody who is like a transgender student that transitioning, and then we may hear about the use of language. But I know we can't just do it because we have we don't make the changes just because we have a person of that identity in the class. But that's when I usually hear about it the most. Otherwise, like if we don't have a person who identifies as transgender or is transitioning, every once in a while we have students to comment on it, but for the most part, not a lot.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I think that's and so, I don't want to stifle conversation here by offering my input, but I think that's when you can use that opportunity as, well, a teaching moment, but also sorry, I'm clicking the wrong one. My apologies. Trying to talk and obviously not very good at multitasking. First of all, I appreciate your candor, Ramona. That's really it's nice of you to share that. Maybe when articulating your commitments, right? That you will make every effort, if depending upon what your commitment is, and I don't mean to dictate what you believe your commitment to your students ought to be, but maybe being transparent about that and saying, this is what I'm committing to, and despite, there may be times when I may, just refer to and then correct myself. I think it's okay as long as you're having that conversation with your, and being transparent about your intention, right? And that you're thinking about this, that this is important to you, I think is really a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yep. I think so.
Anyone else want to expand upon any of the things they added? And I have a couple other discussion questions that I've thrown here in on the slides, discovering any insights, or what do you perceive, again, going back to Ramona's example, to perceive to be the opportunities and barriers when reviewing and redesigning your syllabus for inclusivity?
I wrote the flexibility with accountability, because I don't think we do our students a service if we always let them off the hook when I traveled for the weekend and my computer, or I don't have internet. And I'm like, well, you should have thought that before you got on the plane. You should have handed this in before you left. So no, I don't. Yes, I agree to be flexible, but I think we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, and like everyone says, the syllabus is ready for them the first week of class. They can comb through that syllabus, see when they travel, and do their work ahead of time.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I like that expression, flexibility with accountability. And I think, I think, as you say, providing a rationale for that, why you have that expectation, right? In your wording of that statement, in your, at any point in your syllabus or in your inclusive teaching statement, why that's important to you, why that's an important teaching value, and a value you hope that they would adopt as well as future practitioners.
Okay, that's a good idea. When you say something, when you have a rule or something like that, state why it's so important. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, it's really just going back to that, right? Providing that rationale and being transparent with students as to why you have that. Because you're all professionals, you know why you have the expectations that you do, right? And you know why it's relevant to your work and to their work, their future work. And I think articulating that is always a good idea. We developed this inclusive syllabus checklist, a little infographic to support this to support this workshop. So we're going to throw that link in the chat in just a moment and send it out with the workshop materials afterwards. So if you are looking to review and revise your syllabus for inclusivity, you can use this checklist to assist you, and city staff are also happy to help and perform that review with you or help you with that, because I know it's a big undertaking and you're already overwhelmed, right? So we'll throw that link in the chat in a moment, but it includes a lot of the recommendations that we offered today.
Yep.
And then here are our references and suggested resources, a couple of really wonderful texts. Really seminal texts on the topic of inclusive teaching are that first one by Addie and Mitchell, What Inclusive Instructors Do. And then also Hogan and Sappy's text toward the bottom, Inclusive Teaching. These are great. If you're looking for just great primers in inclusive teaching and how to make those changes in your classroom, I recommend those among many other articles and texts on the topic. And then before you leave, please take a moment to let us know how we did. And if you have any feedback for us, anything, we hope that, and Lynette, I don't want to dominate the closing of the workshop, but if you have any suggestions, we do hope that this could be the first of several workshops and resources we develop on inclusive teaching, because this were really just sort of, this is but I'm forgetting that expression, but we've just basically, started the conversation. There's so much more we could talk about with regard to inclusive teaching in the classroom environment and more. So in assessment, among other things. So please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. Lynette, did you want to add anything? Sorry.
And you can reach out to anyone inside city and they can direct you to those or help you with us